Hey everyone, Seth here. Quick reminder, if you want to contact us with a question or comment or whatever, there are a couple ways you can do so. Either you can go to our email at more.layers.podcast@gmail.com, or you can go to YouTube, use the comment section below the videos, or a direct YouTube message is another way you can do that. And just feel free to give us any questions, comments, podcast topic suggestions, whatever, shout out, whatever, and we'll try to get back. Hey everyone, it's mid-May and welcome again to More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
I'm Jordan Smith, and we do apologize that this episode took a little bit longer than expected. We were going to shoot for recording it towards the middle of the week, and then that got delayed, so then we shot for Friday. But as Seth said in a short video that he posted, right before we were going to, my landlord contacted me, asked if I could help him with some yard work, because he would have been there all day and then some otherwise. And I figure, you know what, the guy's giving me a place to live. I got to do something to help him. I didn't think it was going to take as long as it did, but as a result, we postponed until now. But now we're here.
Yeah, so yeah, as you mentioned, I did post a short video kind of explaining kind of the outline for this episode, which we'll get into. And so we're going to start with discussing the recently announced 2024 Fall Artists Unlimited musical, which is Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. Fun fact, Beauty and the Beast is honestly one of my favorite stories. Definitely one of my favorite Disney movies, particularly the animated one. Yeah, for some reason, it's just a story that grabs me, and I enjoy it every time I watch it, no matter how many times.
Yeah, it probably ranks up there as one of my personal favorite musicals. I've seen it. Think I've seen at least 3 productions of it in the past. Uh, well, not counting the Artists Unlimited one, though Jordan was in that one.
Yep,
But
I was.
now I'll get the chance to be in it as well, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Oh, it's going to be great. I assure you.
Yeah.
So yeah, as Seth mentioned, we are doing Beauty and the Beast, and we're going to take a little bit of time here to go through some of the characters and try to think who would be a good fit out of the people in the cast for those roles. And I'm sure Seth did the same, but for me personally, I'm going to try and refrain from recasting someone as the same character they were 8 years ago. And I'll start off by saying one thing. Every single person I have talked to about the casting ideas for the show so far, literally all of them have said that they will be surprised if our friend Anthony Vignare is not LeFou.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, he was the one that I personally predicted for that role specifically. So, yeah, I think it's little hard not to see.
Oh yeah, he's at the right size for it. He's shown that he can play these really zany, goofy characters, which LeFou definitely is. And I can definitely see him working off with whoever ends up playing Gaston really well. In most cases, whoever he works with, he has a blast with. So this would be fun to watch.
Yeah. Okay. So, what about for the role of Gaston? What are you thinking?
For Gaston, there are a couple ideas. I don't know if they'll bring back our friend Micah for that, because he's probably off doing his own thing now. But the idea came across that maybe I could do it. Like Gaston's relatively tall. I have a deeper voice for it. So that could definitely make some sense. And looking back at the roles I've played, I don't really often play the overall bad guy, the overall villain of the story. Like sometimes I might play someone who's a little nasty, but not straight up evil. So this could be a nice change of pace as well.
Yeah. You actually were my prediction for the role. I think you got like the energy, you've got the man, I'm trying to kind of put my thoughts into words. I'm not sure. Let me think about this. Yeah, just got the vocal projection, the I guess amplitude, and I think from what I've heard you do before, I guess like on stage and elsewhere, I think it that makes it all make sense to me.
All right, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah.
And then let's see, for Belle, one of the big leads of the entire show, I've actually struggled a little bit with this one because there could be some people that I can think of that might have some of the elements of Belle, but maybe not all of them. There's one or two that came to mind, but I wasn't entirely sure. What I do know is that our director, when they announced the show that day, told me that even he wasn't sure yet who was going to play her. So I'm sure there's definitely some possibilities. But for that one, I'm a little stuck.
I will say, I think in theater in general, Belle is one of the most difficult characters to cast in productions like this. I think usually I think a major role like say that or like Mary Poppins or Ariel. Um, well, I think more often than not has ended up going to some volunteer who doesn't like recurringly get involved in these things. Maybe does like one show and that's it sometimes.
Yeah,
I don't.
that's definitely happened before.
Yeah. But we have some volunteers who regularly they come back, and so we're like definitely more close than not with them. And I did think maybe Kara Jansen, who was our Mrs. Banks previously.
Yeah, she definitely was one of the people that came to my mind. I don't know if it's because like certain costumes or hair pieces kind of resembled Belle to some degree, and I know she can sing. She's a wonderful singer.
Yeah.
So if they don't get a volunteer from outside the group to play Belle, yeah, she could definitely do it.
I'll say in the past few years that I've been part of this program, we've had plenty of very talented volunteer performers working with us, and they constantly bring in new ones, and they have, I think, delivered, if not more. And I have an idea. I don't know if I want to say their name of one that I've met more recently, who's a student who could get involved and volunteer with us, I suppose, if they wanted to, and might fit the role really well. Well, I would personally, if they if they got the role, I would be thrilled. But I'm sure, not to put anyone else down, but I'm sure whoever gets it is they're going to do really well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one other person that I contemplated, but I wasn't sure about for different reasons, was our mutual friend in our small group, Shannon Kirkpatrick. I've seen her sing before. She's a phenomenal singer. I feel like some of her personality lines up with Belle, and I mean that in the best way. What made me unsure is that she hasn't done a lot of acting before, from what I understand. So throwing her into a lead role like this, as difficult as Belle is right off the bat, might be a little bit overwhelming. But in terms of skill, I feel like she has the potential. It's just not something that she's used to.
Well, I know that she does have some prior experience. I know she did at least one school production with my brother
Oh,
several
that's
years ago.
true. You did bring that up once, yeah.
Yes, and I know she has a background in sports, played sports throughout school, and of course, there is a bit of a physical dancing demand for this character, so I think she could handle that easily. So
Sure, maybe, and I think she actually knows our artistic director because I think they go to the same church, is something she told me recently. And if that's the case, maybe he'll bring her in, or maybe we can say, hey, maybe you'd be interested. You should talk to him, and maybe he'll cast you.
yeah, we could always sneakily put the bug in her ear, so to speak.
Yep. Yeah, maybe. And
Yeah,
it'd be cool to be on stage with her as well as in a small group.
yeah. And I know that also, fun fact,
Hmm.
same guy, artistic director, actually was the director of that production that she and my brother were in, and
No
in middle
kidding.
school. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. I'd known the director maybe about a couple years. He had taught one of my music classes at least. So yeah,
Yeah, maybe I'll talk to him and be kind of throw the idea his way of saying, hey, maybe bring her in
yeah,
if you still don't know.
yeah, yeah. Maybe mention, hey, remember that skater dude, lady? Maybe bring her in.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that'll jog his memory, and maybe he'll think, maybe.
And then if we're going to talk about one of the big lead roles, might as well talk about the other one, that being, of course, the Beast.
Of course.
Um, this is another one maybe they'll bring a volunteer in for. I will say, though, there are a couple people that I thought of that could play the Beast. And Seth, you were definitely one of them. And the reason I thought about you, Seth, is because I've seen, like, to kind of give some background on the character, the Beast himself, he can be, for the lack of a better word, beastly at times, but he also has a very gentle side. Seth here, to my viewing audience, definitely has that gentle side. And then I also thought about when we did Lion King Jr., he played Scar. So he's shown that he can also have that vicious animalistic side. And with Beast being both of those and Seth having done both of those, that would be a solid choice in my eyes.
Yeah, well, that kind of helps boost my confidence. I'm not sure how good my odds are, honestly, but it's definitely it would be my first choice if I had any power to really control that. I mean, Carl did talk to me a little bit at the reunion, saying, what are you thinking? What are you thinking you might like? And I'm like, I think I might like the Beast. I said, and I kind of gave my reasoning. I think it'd be a good like emotional outlet. I think it would be like something really relatable, and I'm not sure if that was enough to convince him. I think maybe he'll have to maybe think back to some of the performing I've done in the past, and maybe whatever the decision is, I'm sure it'll be the right one.
Oh, yeah. They try to give everybody the most fitting role, or obviously they can't cast everybody as the same character as much as they might want to. Um, but yeah, I will also say to you, Seth, that I've talked to some other cast members, and we're all rooting for you to get a bigger role this year because you've definitely had some good roles, but some of your characters show up briefly compared to some other ones. So we're really hoping you get a bigger role this year.
Well, I'll just say about that, thank you to yourself and to everyone who said that. I appreciate that.
Of course, you've definitely earned it, and I've talked to some of the directors, and they've acknowledged your skills. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see.
And then when it comes to Lumiere, which is the character I played 8 years ago, I, again, keeping from reprising roles, the one thing I will say is that a couple of our actors, Jason King and Tyler Nersinger, the two of them have been shown in recent years to play off of each other at least fairly well. So when it comes to Lumiere and Cogsworth, I would think those two might end up playing those characters. Which one will play which character? That's a little bit fuzzier for me, but they've been shown to be a good duo, and these two characters are hilarious and have their serious moments, of course. Uh, yeah, I feel like with how well they work off of each other, those two characters, regardless of which one they play, would be a solid choice.
Yeah. Honestly, Lumiere was the one role that I was never able to really land on a specific one for. I feel like I'd pretty much predicted just about every major player for everything else. So yeah, that was honestly the most difficult. But yeah, your theory makes plenty of sense though.
Sure. It's like oftentimes I've seen in this cast, whenever two actors are shown to work off of each other really well, they will often pair them together. Like when our mutual friend Dalton Letta was part of the cast, they would often have Dalton and myself working off of each other. Like when we did Mary Poppins the first time, I was Mr. Banks, he was my butler. Beauty and the Beast the following year, he was the Beast, I was Lumiere. And I think the big one was when we did Shrek, and he was Shrek, I was Donkey. So, yeah, Tyler and Jason are one of the latest examples, I should say, of actors who work off of each other really well. And then, of course, the trio of Cogsworth, Lumiere, and then Mrs. Potts. I'm not sure if our friend Sammy is going to be part of the cast this year or not. It seemed like it was a little bit up in the air. And she played Mrs. Potts the first time, so probably will not be her. If it is going to be someone else, my first thought was possibly Jenna, who played the Feather Duster the first time. Jenna has been shown to play sassy or evil characters really well. And again, I mean that in the best way. Mrs. Potts isn't necessarily either one of those things. So maybe this kind of role could help her branch out. And I just think she has what it takes to play a character like this.
Well, I think that there's a pretty good chance of that. I predicted somebody different. I predicted Bailey Catena for that role. I don't know, seems to have that sort of gentle, affectionate kind of personality that kind of comes out when you're talking to her or something. I don't know. And she's got plenty of energy, but I think either of them could do it.
Sure, absolutely. And of course, when you have Mrs. Potts, you also have Chip.
Yes.
Chip was a little bit harder to think of somebody, at least at first, because when we did it the first time, it was played almost by two people because they had an understudy of sorts in case the other one was having trouble or whatever. And we don't have too many people in the cast who are like extremely young. Most of them are at least 10 years old at this point. I think one person that could do it could possibly be Creed, who was in at least Willy Wonka. I want to say he was in Mary Poppins too.
Yeah, he was.
But he definitely is one of the younger people in the cast, and that alone might help his chances greatly of playing someone like Chip. And depending on what they do with it, Chip might either be able to move around, or they might do what they did last time and have Chip on a table. So depending on what they do with that, I think someone like Creed could still pull it off.
Yeah, I think this one is tricky because I don't know if there are too many in our group who are that young in age, but
Right.
I did land on somebody. I think a student volunteer, Callan Fetzner, whom I think is in kind of the right age, or at least looks and sounds the right age, and has got a bit of a nice, bright, shiny vibe to him. So maybe him.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple possibilities here. Basically, as long as their voice hasn't dropped like ours has,
No,
uh, they have a chance of playing Chip.
no. Yeah.
All right. Let's see some of the other characters. Maurice.
Yep.
This one was also a little bit interesting, not necessarily difficult, but there were definitely some candidates I thought of. Uh, I thought of Jason King for that one as well. I thought of you, Seth, possibly. Um, I was kind of tossing a few ideas around. However, I recently met with our mutual family friends, the Deacons. And I came to find out that Andrew, who was unable to join us last year, is coming back to join the cast this year. He believed he had enough time in his schedule, it was open enough that he would be able to do the show while also doing classes and work. Well, I guess class, because they told me he only was taking one to finish off his degree. So if that's the case, then I feel like he would definitely be a solid choice for Maurice.
Yeah, he's the one I predicted for that role as well. But you probably saw that. Um, yeah, and yeah, like kind of like Jordan just mentioned, he was I don't know, at least considering coming back for this year, and if he does, I think that'll be cool. Yeah, and I think he's maybe done this show for a school production before. Maybe he could teach us a thing or two, maybe. And for Maurice, I think you know, I feel like he's got enough projection or whatever you need for that, and whatever. So
And he's played parental figures several times
yes,
in theater before, whether it be with us or at Greece Athena or something along that line. In fact, the joke has been made that oftentimes he plays a parent who doesn't always do a good job as a parent, whether it be sending his child to a tower or just encouraging how spoiled his child is. Um, so this would be a nice change of pace where he plays a solid parent who's there for the child. And of course, Maurice has some serious and goofy moments, like many of these other characters do. And Andrew, I feel, is capable of doing both as well. So putting all that together, I think it's solid.
yeah,
Maybe not guaranteed, but solid.
yeah. I don't think it's too often you see parents portrayed in that positive light in the media, like in fiction. But this is
Right.
one of those cases, I think. So meaning Beauty and the Beast, Maurice, a good, more positive case. I think that'll be maybe kind of a nice change of pace.
Sure. And I'm sure he wants to play a good parent for once.
Yeah.
And I did mention this one briefly. Uh, I mentioned the feather duster Babette. I wasn't entirely sure. Again, if we're not reprising roles, who might be this character? If our friend Hope, who played Mary Poppins last year, were to join the cast again, which I think she's still technically allowed to do, then maybe she could do it. But I think she's going to school a little too far away to be able to manage being in the cast again, which kind
I
of
don't know. Is
stinks.
there like a rule that fresh out of high schools can't do it like after graduating?
Well, I don't know if there's a written rule per se, but from what I've seen over the years is that most volunteer actors, once they graduate high school, they're just they just move on and go off to different things. I don't know if it's because they're required to do that or if it's just kind of a customary tradition type of thing.
Yeah,
But
well, I believe Hope's a senior, so I think it would probably be a longer shot than short, you know?
well, yeah, I still think there's a chance, but from what I understand, the school she's going to is a little bit far. So that
Yeah.
would likely be an issue.
Yeah.
This is one of the ones I kind of struggled with because Jenna just played it so well. She was so entertaining in that role that I kind of find difficulty thinking of anybody else. Not saying no one else could do it, but there are just some roles that we've seen in theater, in movies, TV shows that are just played so well by one person that it becomes very difficult to picture anyone else doing it.
It's fair.
One thing I will say for a different character entirely is the dresser. I think her name is Madame de la Grande Bouche.
Oh, the
Which for
opera
those who-
singing dresser. Yeah.
Yeah, which for those who don't know, I believe translates out to big mouth. Um,
I never knew that. I mean, I don't know if you know that for certain. I never thought about that.
well, I think our director brought it to my attention when they were talking to the person who played it last time, which is another person whose name is Shannon, because she is really good at hitting some of those higher notes.
Yeah, she definitely has that sort of operatic, classical crossover vocal style that would be perfect. Well, she's already done it, so if she were involved, she probably wouldn't get it again. But
Well, from what I understand after seeing some of her Facebook posts, it sounds like she was at least interested in being in the show again. But of course, they're probably not going to reprise any roles if they can help it. So I'm thinking if Sammy does it again, then she could probably play that role. Because, I mean, she has that caring personality that the dresser has, especially when Belle first gets there and is first imprisoned. But honestly, aside from maybe Hope and one or two other younger actors in the cast, Sammy is one of the few people that I'm aware of, at least in this cast, who can also hit notes that high.
oh yeah, I think we got a bit of a taste of that last production when she played Miss Andrew. I think we got a little bit of a taste of that.
Yeah, there's a couple moments in that show, particularly during her villain song, if you will, where she holds a note for an extended amount of time. And at one point, she does go way up here in the pitch. And I remember every time she did that, the people off stage were just so impressed. It's like if Sammy does decide to come back for one reason or another, I feel like for reasons like that, she could be a good fit for that character. And then one other character I was thinking about was the head of the asylum, Monsieur Dark, I think is how you pronounce it.
Monsieur Dark, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. There were some candidates I thought of. Of course, maybe Andy could do it again if they are going to have someone reprise their role, because it's not too demanding of one. Like, he really only shows up twice, and both times in the second act. But again, trying to avoid reprising roles. I figure maybe that's something Tyler could do if he doesn't end up being Cogsworth or Lumiere. That's
That's
another.
what I thought, Tyler, for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's something I could see him doing for sure. It's in his vocal range. I kind of would be interested in seeing him play a role like that. That's another role I thought maybe you could do if they don't cast you as someone like the Beast or
Yeah.
one of the other characters. And I feel like there was at least one other actor I'd thought of. I'm trying to remember who it was. It's not coming to me now. Maybe I'll remember after we stop recording and I'll leave a comment somewhere. But yeah, I feel like I'm on the same page as you on that one. If Tyler isn't Cogsworth or Lumiere, then maybe he could play this guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought of like Jason King as Cogsworth, Stephanie Canis as Babette. These were like, I guess these were more or less shots in the dark. They were more based on like things like deduction after, going through possibilities for other characters and stuff, just I think they're fairly close anyway. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, Jason King is definitely a candidate for Cogsworth or Lumiere. I feel like as long as he can do the accent for either one, then it's a very distinct possibility. I haven't heard him do too many accents outside of German. That being said, if he can do an accent like German, then there's definitely some good chance, especially if someone takes the time to work with him, that he could definitely do another accent like that. I've had to do a few accents over the years. I'm sure he could too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So it looks like we are going to have our shows this year in October. So we may be starting to practice a little earlier than we have in recent years, but yeah. So we'll get a schedule, I'm sure, when we're just getting started. But either way, I think we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a pretty crazy adventure, learning a new script and everything, and just hopefully we'll just be able to just kind of take a deep breath, endure it, and just put everything we've got into it.
Oh, I'm sure we will. We do every year, and I don't plan on changing that now.
No.
It's going to be a good one for sure. It is going to stink that they're putting Beauty and the Beast in the vault, so no one will be able to do it for a few years in the foreseeable future. But one thing I do know is that after they said the show was going to be in October this year instead of November, I did reach out and ask if they planned on starting rehearsals sooner as well. Otherwise, we might have had a solid month between the start of rehearsals and opening night, which may be a little too much pressure for some of these actors. But they did confirm with me that they are going to start earlier. They just don't have an exact schedule figured out yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll see when we need to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So, kind of switching gears here. This is a new curious question. This time it's, when you were a kid, what did you dream of growing up to be?
Yeah, this is definitely a classic question that many will get asked when they're in school, especially in like elementary school, for example, maybe in high school as you're starting to figure out, are you going to go to college? What degree are you going to get something in? But I remember as a kid, two of the things I thought of more than most were a cop or a fireman. And they're very similar in reasoning. Because a lot of times growing up in some of the cartoons or shows, movies I watched, they often portrayed people like cops or firemen or people who work in the medical field, like people who operate an ambulance, for example. They portrayed them as heroes, even almost to the degree of a superhero. And it's like all the things they could do, all the dangerous stuff they would walk into just to save somebody. It's like, that's the kind of thing I love to imagine myself doing as a child. And honestly, even though my imagination was a little bit exaggerated, it's not entirely inaccurate either. Because to me, people who work in law enforcement or fighting fires or in the medical world, to me, those are some of the people, aside from people who serve in the army, the military, whatever, they are some of the closest examples to real life superheroes. Like they will possibly risk their lives on an everyday basis to save someone else's life, if not multiple lives. Like it's an extremely dangerous life or dangerous job that often doesn't get noticed as much as I think it definitely should.
Yeah,
So,
I will say. Yeah, I will say. Like think. Like first responders, military, and the like. They have probably the most dangerous work on the planet, and they put so much intense physical training and hard work into it, and they do and they work sometimes like late hours or around the clock or whatever, and they really are are sacrificing probably more than anybody else. And I'm taking one verse that often comes to my mind when I think of like the military is a verse from America the Beautiful that goes, "Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, etc." And I feel like these they those kind of people are probably the most courageous and most selfless and most giving people uh, in our community, in our society. It's something it's something that really should not be taken for granted.
it absolutely shouldn't. It's like a prime example is like how much time they dedicate to their work. Some people I know, and I will admit I'm guilty of this too. There are times where I haven't always looked forward going to work. Not so much now. I love the job I have right now. But in previous jobs, I've been just like, I really am not looking forward to this. I don't want to be working for 8-9 hours. But anytime I say that, I try to think about how some of these people, they sometimes work for days on end for what could potentially be nonstop. Sure, they might switch out every so often so some of them can actually rest for a little bit. But they will work some of the longest shifts out of anybody. And not only that, but let's take, for example, some of the biggest disasters this country has ever seen. I'm sure there are at least one or two that'll come to people's minds. People like us, when that happens, we can stay away, or if we're anywhere close, we can walk away from it and stay clear. Like just stay far away, just get out of harm's way, get out of the danger as fast as we can. A lot of those people, because of their job, they head towards the danger, risking their lives. And some of them do lose their lives in situations like that. And they go into danger like that, knowing full well that they may not come back out. That to me is a hero.
And in a way, it's kind of like a picture of what Christ has done for the whole world, giving his own life on the cross, and that's more of a spiritual example more than an earthly physical one like we're talking about with the first responders. But it is very much a picture of giving and putting others before yourself, which is really the kind of lifestyle I think we as Christians are kind of called to in a way. So.
Right. And then, of course, this one isn't necessarily a possibility, at least not in the usual sense, but definitely as a kid, especially after seeing some of those jobs or seeing some of these other cartoons I'd watched, I would have loved as a kid to be a real life superhero. Like, not just because of some of the cool abilities that some of them have, like super speed, flight, teleportation, what have you, but just the fact that they always went out of their way, at least most of them and most of the time, to help someone else, even if it was just one person who is in imminent danger. No matter how small it is or how big it is, it's like, no problem. I will save the day. I will save this person's life just because I can. I have the capability, so I'm going to do it. And a lot of superheroes, they don't ask for anything in return either. And that's very honorable, because some of them could be like, yeah, I just saved your life. You owe me one. I can't think of too many superheroes that do something like that. And it's like, I would just love to help people, and the superpowers would just be an added bonus.
Yeah, I have heard it said that true love is giving of yourself without expecting something in return or without asking for anything back.
Yeah, oftentimes when I help somebody, they will offer to pay me back. And a lot of the time, I try to at least make sure they know, even if they insist upon it, that they don't have to.
Yeah.
Like with my landlord, who I did some yard work with, he wanted to pay for my dinner for that evening because I helped him. And I kept telling him, by no means do you have to do that. You're already doing more than enough for me. This is the least I can do.
Yeah, I think it'd be a pretty hard offer for me to pass up. You know, I'm a pretty big foodie. I love going out to meals like every week or other or so. So yeah, I've been doing that a lot with another friend of mine. So
Yeah, I've been doing that a few times, especially with the kind of work that I do. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But by no means do people have to feel like they owe me something when I help them out.
yeah. Now, you had an uncle, I think, who was involved in some way in 9/11, if I remember right.
He was, and like, he doesn't always like to discuss it himself, and I very much understand that. Um, but he was a deputy sheriff at the time, and he risked life and limb on that day to help so many people. And there's a very well-known photo that was used on newspapers, news articles. People would share it with each other constantly, of when he was holding an injured woman in his arms, who was thankfully able to escape the tragedy of that day. Granted, she didn't get out of it scot-free. She was very much injured. You can tell just by looking at her that she was not doing well. But what I can thankfully say is, through my uncle's valiant efforts, she made it out alive. And from what I understand, even to this day, every year on that day, he will contact her just to see how she's doing.
Oh, it's crazy. Like every day for like almost 25 years, he's done that. Like every year on that day for 25 years, he's like done that. Well, just under 25.
Right. I'm pretty sure he's done it every year. I'm sure my family could verify, but even if he doesn't do it now, the fact that he did it for so long showed just how much he cared about even just one individual's well-being. So he is a hero, even if he doesn't like to discuss it, even if he doesn't agree. He is the exact definition of a real world hero.
Well, to be fair, it's a kind of event that doesn't that often happen or happen on that sort of large scale. You don't often like regularly see that kind of collateral damage or whatever. It's something I think no one saw coming. So
Right. But that's just it too, because just because you don't expect it,
yeah,
doesn't mean that they wouldn't be willing to step in if something did happen. And in this case, it did.
yeah,
And from what I understand, my uncle wasn't even really on the clock at the time. He just happened to be down the street at a courthouse or something when this event started taking place. And he immediately rushed into action, from what I understand. I'm trying to remember all my historical facts of that. And he did inhale some smoke, and thankfully he survived. In fact, he actually came to our production of Mary Poppins last year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he absolutely loved it. We swapped hats as a little bit of a joke because he was wearing a very similar one. And our friend Sammy actually drew a picture based on that photo that we discussed earlier and
That's
presented
nice.
it to him. He now has it displayed on his wall.
That's cool.
Yeah. So even now, people are recognizing his efforts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's nice.
Absolutely. But then moving on, I did think for a little while growing up about being a musician. In fact, I was playing an instrument in some of my younger years, that being a violin. For various reasons, I kind of stopped doing it after a while. But at the time, I figured how cool would it be to be a musician, to play an instrument in front of God knows how many people in this big arena and just entertain them in ways that, at least at the time, I love to do. Nowadays, when it comes to playing an instrument, I've contemplated playing the piano, but it's something I would probably end up just doing more so for fun and I wouldn't take too seriously. But yeah, as I grew up, I was definitely contemplating being a musician.
My brother's a musician, as I've said before, and one time he tried to kind of get me to kind of try the guitar a little bit. He plays guitar, and I I gave it a pretty good effort, but I couldn't really get it. It's not as easy as it looks. I will tell you. You got to from what I understand, you were really got to squeeze the strings real good, and I got to put right pressure in the right places. It's not that simple.
You need a lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of muscle memory. Your fingers, especially if you're playing something faster, basically need to move like spider legs in order to get to where they need to be on the strings at any given moment just to play one particular note.
Yeah.
So just because there's only like 4 to 6 strings on that guitar, possibly more depending on the kind, it doesn't mean it's that easy. It's far from easy. Far from easy.
Yeah. No, I don't think I was made for it.
And maybe if I put in the effort, I could figure it out after a while. But yeah, I don't know if guitar's for me either.
No. Yeah.
And then I did think about being an athlete as well, because like with the violin, I did play some sports growing up, mostly soccer or football for the non-Americans out there. I played until I think I was about 15 or so. I think around that time, the biggest reason I stopped is because the team I was on at the school I was at the time, they didn't really have me out on the field that much. I just felt like I was watching from the sidelines most of the time, watching the clock count down. And I think that killed a lot of my motivation to keep it going. And then the following year, I tried basketball, which wasn't bad per se. It was just something that I was certainly not used to. And after seeing firsthand on the field or on the court, I guess, how some people who are really good at it are playing and some of the things they do, it's like, okay, probably not my style. I'm more for just playing casually or shooting hoops. And then one other one that I thought of was possibly being a story writer of some variety, whether it be in the style of a comic book or a novel or fantasy novel, that sort of thing. Because growing up, and even now, I love a lot of stories that take place in a fantasy or medieval type setting, some of which include popular ones like Narnia, Lord of the Rings, or just something that wouldn't normally happen in the real world, or even something that can't happen in the real world. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table is one of my favorite stories, generally speaking. So that would definitely be one. But after a while, I noticed I was writing a lot of the same kind of story, and it's like my creativity was faulting a little bit.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten better at it in terms of writing these short stories, or at least picturing stories playing out in my head in some way. I just don't know if story writing, especially full-length books, is up my alley.
That's fair.
And then one I almost forgot about, I'll throw this on kind of last minute, is being a knight. Kind of going along with the whole medieval thing. One thing that I've always had a fascination with, I'm not sure how it started though, is swords. I even have a collection of swords. They're not like really sharp or anything. They're just more so replicas based on ones found in fiction. And along with one, I think it's a katana or something, a very similar shape. But I've always had a fascination with swords. I loved watching the people wielding swords in different stories. Even like one of my favorite episodes of SpongeBob is when they travel to medieval times. And there's, of course, some sword swinging there. Narnia. I love the final battle at the end of Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe where Peter is fighting the White Witch with the sword. It's like, how cool would it be to be wearing this epic-looking suit of armor, wielding a sword, and just mowing down all these different opponents in quick succession?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know if real life knight is a possibility at this point, but there are things like Renaissance fairs, and if you know the restaurant Medieval Times, you could maybe like get a stint as a performer there, I suppose.
You don't really see knights in the traditional sense now, although people are still knighted by royalty,
Right.
even to this day. In fact, there was somebody I remember reading about, I forget exactly who it was, that either was going to be knighted soon or just was recently. But some people might know Ian McKellen, who played Gandalf, for example, as Sir Ian McKellen, because he was knighted. Christopher Lee, same thing. He was knighted at some point.
Elton John.
Yep, he was also knighted. And there's a few examples out there. So I could still technically be knighted. I just wouldn't be a knight in the traditional sense. If anything, I would just have the title of Sir at the beginning of my name, which is still a great honor. It's just not used in the same way anymore.
Well, again, you could probably play one if you wanted.
Yeah, I could. I would have a blast with that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I had a couple similar answers. I did have sort of, well, I'll just say naive dreams of like playing sports, making movies, making music, and kind of like jumped from one to the next for a while. And I think the main reason I gravitated toward those sort of ideas was because it's the kind of stuff that gets like the most focus in the media, the more glamorization. And
Sure, that makes sense.
I think the problem was I liked the idea of doing those things a lot more than actually doing them. I couldn't really commit to them. I didn't want to practice, so I don't think it could have worked, at least back then.
Right. I mean, a lot of times putting something into practice is a lot harder than people think.
Yeah.
It's like they want to get to this point, but they're not always able or willing or whatever reason to take the steps needed to get to that point. And sometimes that is very much understandable.
Yeah. Also, at times I thought about author. I used to write things like fan fiction and blogs and stuff. I also thought of like DJing for some reason. I thought that looked kind of cool, and a minister because I had some ministers in my family. So, but I don't know. I don't know if I could really even do that, make the commitment. I thought I have had brief thoughts about going back to school, like for seminary, but I'm not really. I'm not sure how much I would legitimately enjoy that kind of work field. But yeah,
I definitely get you. It is a long, long journey to do something like that a lot of the time. Some of my friends, they do go around the world and minister to people. Like one of our small group friends, she currently does something like that in Mozambique. She's all the way in Africa, and she spends the vast majority of the year there. Like she comes home for maybe 2 months at a time, and then the other 10, she's away from home. She's in unfamiliar territory. But from what I understand, she enjoys doing it. And I feel like if that's the case, then that's really all that matters. As long as she's enjoying it and doesn't resent it in any way, I applaud her efforts. But it does take a lot of work. A lot of these things, whether it be a minister, a DJ, an author, musician, athlete, they all take hard work. They most certainly do. It's very time consuming. The end goal is often worth it. And sometimes it can be a struggle to get to that point. And with certain things like athletes or musicians, you often have to be at the right place at the right time. Because a lot of entertainment industry jobs, like some of those, it's very much a competition. Like some people are very lucky and get in early and are able to build themselves up over time. And other people, they have to fight tooth and nail just to get anything significant. So a lot of times it just comes down to how much effort you're willing to put in or what interests you have and if they change over time. There's a lot of elements. And once you find something that you're really passionate about, the work leading to that success point is absolutely worth it. Hopefully I wasn't rambling too much, but
no, it's okay. It's all right. Um, I think kind of my ambition now would be maybe voice acting and just about anything like voiceovers for television, maybe an occasional cartoon, audiobooks, commercials, and maybe doing some like television hosting here and there. So
I could definitely see it.
yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. So that pretty much is all we got. Thanks everybody for streaming, and be sure to utilize the platforms as mentioned in my intro, and leave comments, emails, direct messages. You got all the information there in the intro, and take advantage of that, and let us know what you have to say.
Oh yeah, any interaction we have with our audience is more than welcome. Uh, and like Seth often says, if you have comments, questions in regards to this episode or any of our previous ones, or if you have suggestions for future episodes, let us know. And if you are listening or watching this and you are part of our Artist Unlimited family, let us know who you think is going to play who in our production of Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, sure. Please.
Maybe some of you will have some insight that we didn't even think of.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care.